Sex in the pews. Sex in the pews. Sex in the pews.
Sex in the pews.
Oh, it's a beautiful day in Tampa Bay for Thank God. It's Monday, February 4th, 2019, the only 2/4/2019 in the history of humanity. Let us continue to choose
on purpose,
with a purpose,
to give a great day
and a great week.
And a great week.
Welcome to the new week, Big O.
Here we are.
You ready to rock and roll?
Always.
I know that you are a big disciple of Mr. Gary V.
The one and only.
And what does Gary V say about the people that hate Mondays?
Fuck you.
That's what he says. That's what Gary V says. Why does he say that?
Because if you hate Mondays and you're living for the week, you've got one fucking life. 400 trillion to 1. Those are the odds that you actually have a life. So by even being here, you've won the fucking lottery.
Yes.
And so if you're living in a situation where you only get 2.5 days out of the week that you look forward to and get to experience the freedom that is afforded to you 24/7, then you need to change it up, because every day is fucking you're missing out on life. So fuck you if you hate Mondays.
Fuck you, and greetings, you beautiful humans. This is Glenn Klein
and Owen Pratt.
Welcome in the pews for a new week, a fresh week to be able to get splinters.
This is the most vulgar I've cursed at anybody in my life, I think.
I don't think so. I hung out with you a little bit, but it was a good one. It was nice.
Now I got the spirit of the Vaynerchuk fell upon me.
Yes, that's what his actual name is, right?
Yep, his actual last name.
Yeah, Gary
Vaynerchuk.
Yeah, he's good. He's good. You know what Louis C.K. says about this wonderful life?
What does he say?
He says you can actually eat bacon. You can have bacon in your mouth. He says even basic cable. A basic cable life, you can eat bacon and you can fuck and you can put your dick in and out, and it's free if you're smart. And if you're gay, you can put your dick up your lover's ass, balls deep, he goes, and he says, and he's your buddy.
And lesbians, you do whatever lesbians do.
Lesbians, they're just doing whatever lesbians do. Oh, God damn it. What happened to him?
Right.
Should have kept his dick in his pants when people were back in his apartment or his dressing room, and should not have asked a woman or women. He asked them, he did ask for permission to show them his penis and masturbate in front of them. It is a power move.
I feel like
it's actually a pussy. It's actually an asshole move is what it is.
I feel like America is going through puberty right now.
No doubt about it.
So we don't know what to do with we're just behaving, just confused, sexually doing weird, stupid shit.
Yep. And in fact, the intermediator, Chris Harrington, that we had on Glenn Klein Online and will have on Sex in the Pews, because he's got an amazing story and his perspective on sexuality. He said, we are a young country. We're the youngest country out there. So we're actually in puberty right now. We don't know what the fuck to do with our power, our testosterone,
raging hormones,
all our big freaking missiles ready to shoot off, and just like a dick looking for something to awkwardly to stick into.
Glenn's flailing his arm through the air right now
in Louis C.K. fashion. You know, I wish everybody who has any problems at all publicly would just come to me. And just say, how should I deal with this? What should I say? How should I apologize? How long should I go away for? How should I reintroduce myself?
Louis C.K., if you're listening, the website is CoachGlennKlein.com.
Or just go to sexinthepews.com.
Sexinthepews.com.
What else can they find at sexinthepews.com?
Find our Dick Pic of the Week contest. You can listen and stream live. There's a few funny little gems hidden for you underneath the pews, if you will. Some splinters in the back to pick out some tweezers in the back to pick out the splinters.
What was the worst sex industry? What was the worst sex injury that you have ever sustained thus far in your relative? I mean, you've been busy at 25 years old, but I mean, it's a relatively fresh encounter.
I mean, there's only really one thing that would qualify as an injury, and it's a little explicit. I mean, it's really explicit.
Well, go for it, bro. We can handle it.
I don't know, man.
We can handle this.
We may have to edit this one out.
Well, we'll see.
All right. Let me write down the time just in case.
Well, you could have just done that. Now you got to tell the people because of course we wouldn't have any of this in there.
All right, so
paint the picture. Where are you at? What's going on?
I'm being real vulnerable here. Yeah. I'm a couple beers deep, so I'm primed and lubed and ready to go, baby.
Name of my sex tape.
So I'm dating a female at the time. It was my longest dating relationship.
Glad to clarify that it was a female.
And I am, for those of you that are unaware, which are probably most of you, I am uncircumcised. All right. And so.
Now I understand why you were. Of course, who the hell cares? But go ahead.
Right. Okay. So.
Yeah, it is pretty personal.
It is pretty personal.
I'm uncircumcised, by the way.
All right. Thanks for sharing.
On the 8th day.
This is my moment, Glenn.
Like the good Hebrew that I am. I'm trying to help you here a little bit, bro.
All right. So, gosh, this is going to get grody. All right. So,
be fun.
So underneath, for those of you that are circumcised, when you're uncircumcised, there's a little, like the piece of skin, if you pull your lip down, that connects the bottom of your lip to your gums, kind of.
Right.
There's like one of those same little mechanism that goes from like the bottom of your head to the foreskin. Right. And so very, very same kind of deal.
I did not know that.
And I had it all my life, and up until the onset of my sexual experiences growing up, the foreskin doesn't really come down very much. It would kind of hurt, and like it wasn't very stretched out, so it kind of hurt to pull. I couldn't pull it all the way back. But as I started to have sex, it gets a little more flexible, and you could pull it all the way back, revealing the fullness of the head. So I'm having sex with my girlfriend at the time, and we had probably been drinking, and I remember she was drier than she should have been, and I just we were drunk, and I just went for it, and I was like, and it was like it was dry. It was fucking dry.
That's one of the effects that alcohol can have.
One of the effects that the alcohol can have. And then all of a sudden it got really wet, like really wet. Uh-oh. And I'm fucking her, and I didn't realize until after we had finished, but I looked down and there was blood. And and it had hurt, like it hurt me like bad. There was like a moment where I was like, oh, like what the fuck was that? And I had thought, like, I didn't know, I didn't really care. I was drunk and fucking having sex. So I was like, just shake that one off, keep going. And but what had happened was that little piece of skin had gotten torn, and so I was so sore for like a week. I couldn't, like, it would just hurt like a motherfucker.
Did you ice it?
I did not ice it.
If I was coaching you at the time, I would have said get some frozen peas on that bad boy.
Yeah,
that's what they tell you to do after you get a vasectomy. Get a little frozen peas down there. Yeah, that's a good story.
The first time I've shared that. I think that's the first time I've told anybody.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Did you even tell her?
Radio. No, we didn't talk about it. Like, she just went in the shower afterwards, and I was a nervous little freshman in college, you know, and
so did that connective tissue, is that gone now?
It's gone.
So that's a good thing, probably.
Yeah, it frees me up a little bit.
Yeah. My son Joe, who you know, my oldest, he did not have that connective under his tongue. And he had to have surgery when he was a kid because it would have messed up the bottom of his gum without that one. I'm sure there's a name for both the connectivity in the mouth and in the uncircumcised penis. We'll keep you posted on that, folks, because I know that you're going to want to know that. The worst injury that I ever heard of sexually.
Oh, here we go.
This
is going to hurt me just hearing the story again.
Was my sister-in-law's husband, second husband, and she was riding him, and she broke his dick. Now you say, well, wait a second, Glenn Klein. A dick does not have a bone in it to break. Even though we call what? A hard dick.
Boner.
A boner. Because it seems like it has a bone. It doesn't. We even call having sex sometimes boning. But there is no... Newsflash, sex in the pews, newsflash.
Bum, 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 bum.
There is no bone in the dick. But it seems like it when it's working right, when it's hard and firm and erect and penetrating. It seems like there could be a bone in it. But there are ligaments in it and tendons and blood and veins when it's working properly. And his was working properly, apparently.
Up until
something happened and she moved a certain way or got out of control and broke his dick. And like you would break a wrist or an arm or a rib, man could not have sex for a year and a half after that. Had to put it in a splint. They had to stick it in a splint. He's by all counts, he's better now. But Dawn is so competitive with her sisters, always has been. They all are. And from that point on, she literally, when she would ride me or other situations, she would try to break my dick. Just to say, you think you're going to break your husband's dick? I'm going to break my husband's dick. I was like, no, you're not. I would literally say, you're not doing it. And I would just like reposition her, grab her. Yeah. Be careful, gentlemen and ladies. Don't be tempted to break your guy's dick, even though subconsciously women do want to cut their guys' dicks off, subconsciously. On the other hand, they want to please the dick. They want to be a great lover. Everything's two sides of the same coin. Some women are so set on cutting off their man's genitalia, emasculating their man, that they literally do it. Like Lorena Bobbitt did to John Wayne Bobbitt many moons ago. And now there's a documentary coming about the whole story. And she sliced off his dick one night, rode down the little country highway, threw it on the highway. They found his little John Wayne Bobbitt and reattached it. And it still works to this day, according to him. And he ended up, after the reattachment, posing for Playgirl magazine.
God bless him. God bless America.
It just goes to show you, both in your story and my brother-in-law's story and John Wayne Bobbitt's, the dick is very resilient. Yeah, women are generally and universally afraid of being abandoned by their men on a linear scale. It's just like all women have tits. Some are bigger, some are smaller, some are a lot in between. But they all have this fear of abandonment. And like we all do in our individual little lives, we try to validate what we're afraid of. So once women have you boys, they start trying to push buttons subconsciously to see if they can shit test you into submission so that you will abandon them. The ultimate abandonment is death. We all have a fear of death, a fear of and then in a validation attempt, we have death wishes. This is why we do stupid things all the time. This is all subconscious shit.
This reminded me of the last scene in Braveheart when he gets his dick cut off. He was unsubmittable.
But how do you know you don't see his dick cut off?
It's inferred.
No, you inferred it.
He could have been cutting.
I thought he was just being filleted. Like his organ. Well, he could have been. You inferred it. I never did.
You never thought that? You never thought that?
No, never. Not one time.
Are you serious?
I'm serial.
No, you're not.
I'm a serial monogamist. I know, I'm serious. I never thought that they cut off Mel Gibson's probably uncircumcised dick. That's good radio right there. See how you bring that all back around? No, I never thought that one time. But it's a gruesome scene. But it might have been implied. If it was implied by them, inferred by you. See, people interchangeably use implied and inferred. Implying goes out, inferring is how you receive it. Huh. And now you know.
Never knew that one. That's
the rest of the story. Yeah, so, I mean, women, this is what they do. They have to do it. It's their job to test us. We like to call them shit tests. Shit test. Women will shit test you. And to the degree, boys and men.
Break your dick, apparently.
Yes, that's part of it. That you can pass the test, then the women subconsciously think, well, if he can take my shit test, if he passes that, maybe he's worthy of me, of my trust. But it's hard because you got to be a dick. You got to be an alpha male in order to do it effectively. These are techniques you can learn. Just go to CoachGlennKlein.com or stay logged on to this program. You'll learn along the way. But most guys are pussies or assholes. They're not dicks. They're not firm. They're not erect. They're not potent. They're weak. And if a woman's straight, she don't want another pussy. She's got a pussy. Yeah, she's flaccid. Ugh.
Reactive.
Yeah. And an asshole, if an asshole's working, it emits shit and becomes defensive and insecure and sometimes abusive and stalking. Or men just shut down. They don't kill themselves, but they'll get obese. They'll get addicted to drugs. They'll get addicted to alcohol. They'll become workaholics, addicted to golf. There's all kinds of ways to abandon, abusive. There's all kinds of ways. Cheat, quote unquote, cheat. Hate that word. They'll figure out a way to get free, and they don't know what's going on. And this really became a major problem in the last, I was like 50 years since women got the vote and women found their clitorises, thank God, and they're able to make a living and have sex and even get pregnant without the direct involvement of a man. You go to a freaking sperm bank, but they still want the dick. It's amazing. It's a miracle. If there's any miracles left, it's a miracle that there's any straight women left.
I need to go to a sperm bank.
To do what?
To make a deposit.
Are you thinking about that?
Yeah, well, it's been a thought of mine for years. You know, I'd like to spread my seed, and I feel like I've got a strong gene pool.
So you would preserve your sperm.
Well, if we put it in the donor bank, you know, if anyone, some nice lesbian couple out there wanted to.
What about a nice straight couple?
Well, that too. I don't discriminate.
But then were you thinking about freezing your own sperm and then maybe getting yourself fixed so you don't have to worry about an unwanted pregnancy, perhaps?
I've actually got that advice on multiple occasions.
How are you inclined thus far, young man?
How am I inclined?
Towards doing that?
I'm tempted. I feel like it'd just take a weight off my shoulders, and then I just have it for when I needed it, and then when I didn't need it, I wouldn't have the issue and have to worry about it.
Well, that's a very good point.
You know? And it's kind of icky and scary and makes me nervous to think about getting snipped, but part of me is like,
yeah, it works.
You know, practically speaking, this could be a useful thing. It might lighten the load.
My dad got snipped after my brother Jimmy was born. I'm the oldest, Jimmy's the youngest. We have Steve in the middle. And this was years ago. I mean, obviously, this was freaking 50 years ago, more than 50 years ago. And they wanted to, before you had sex again, they want to test you to see if there's any swimmers left. And they
some survivors,
right? So they told him, they said, Bob, after you've had 12 ejaculations, then you can come back and get retested.
How old was your dad at this point?
So he was probably in his 30s,
right.
You know, mid 30s or something. So he gets taken care of, and he said, you got to have 12 ejaculations. And he showed up 4 days later. And the doc said, what are you doing here, Bob? And he said, well, doctor, you told me after I had 12 ejaculations, I should come and get tested to see if there was any sperm left in there. He said, that was 3 days ago. He said, yeah. And the doctors went, you animal. No, I had it, and it does. It frees you up. And to me, the orgasm, it was as strong or stronger for some reason, as intense or more intense. And I think part of the reasons that it may be more intense is because I'm not worried about getting Dawn pregnant or anybody else getting pregnant.
A little psychological freedom there.
Yeah, very much so.
Mm. And that's what we're trying to do here on Sex in the Pews, is just to give you more sexual freedom to experience the fullness, because understanding that you're perfect and righteous and holy, and that your sexual experiences don't affect your relationship or unity with the Creator, removes all the guilt and shame and allows you to have, well, if we're being blunt about it, more intense orgasms.
Yes, and not only you have more, but you're able to give more intense orgasms. We just posted a study that indicates that when women are inseminated, if you will, with more semen, that they have lower rates of depression. And of course, the concept is the semen having something to do with it? Is the sex just better because the guy's not using a condom? Is the guy happier, therefore the woman's happier? And our friend Molly suggested that. She said, well, maybe this is a more pleasurable experience, therefore lowering depression, more serotonin flow. That's pretty interesting.
That's a good proposition on Molly's part.
Yeah. And, but yeah, women will bring this. That's what they do. It's called intercourse. It's a give and a take. It's a push and a pull.
Yin and the yang, baby.
If a woman isn't testing you guys, she's not interested. You just had a shit test.
I did.
With a woman that you only had coffee with one time. You were supposed to go, well, explain to the beautiful humans what happened.
First off, I want to kind of create a little bit of a healthy attitude and mindset around what to do when you are experiencing a shit test. And because a lot of people are like, if a woman's trying to either make you jealous or test you or, you know, give you some shit, ultimately, you know, a lot of guys can tend to like back off or take it and kind of makes them feel icky or dirty. They don't know how to respond. Maybe they get pissed off if they're an asshole. But what you should, a healthy way to think about it is that you should be grateful that it's happening, because that means she is qualifying you as a potential mate.
Yes.
And so she's actually thinking about mating with you, and she recognizes you as a potential partner. So
yeah, and that is so true. But you don't want to get pissed off. And the way that you don't get pissed off is realize the dynamic that's going on. She probably isn't psychologically aware of exactly the dynamic that's happening. And so you don't get defensive, but just shut the fuck up. If you don't respond out of anger, there's no argument. Mm-hmm. You just hear what she has to say, maybe ask a question or two as you seek first to understand in order to be understood. No fuss, no muss, a little bit of tension, make up sex coming, beautiful thing. So what happens to you today?
So I got coffee with this girl the other week, and we had scheduled to go on a little nature adventure to explore the islands of St. Petersburg. Tomorrow, actually. And I reached out to her today. Hey, still on for tomorrow. Can't wait. Blah, blah, blah. And sure enough, she responded with, hey, I don't know what you were. And I had met her on Bumble, one of the dating apps. And she said, hey, I don't know what you're looking for on Bumble, but I was expecting a little more communication, something to that effect. And I made other plans. All right.
Even though you had been in touch with her, she had, I believe...
She had me on Snapchat. She slid in my DMs on Instagram, responded to a couple stories, and I threw her an emoji back and stuff, you know.
So she was shit testing you. So how did you respond to it?
Great. I hope that's a shame. You know, it's going to be a beautiful day, but hey, let me know if you change your mind. Not making a thing about a thing, so it doesn't become a thing.
Exactly.
And some common examples of shit tests are girls bringing up another guy that they find really attractive or are into or speaking highly of to see if you're going to get jealous.
Or past boyfriends. Or if you meet a girl at a bar, a quick shit test they might do is a classic one is, oh, I'm going to go to the bathroom. Wait here. And then if you're going to, by all means, don't wait there. Don't sit there on your phone texting, and just go and talk to the bartender. If you have to meet someone else, talk to. She's shit testing you to see if she can keep you on the leash. Yep.
Control you.
If a woman is straight, she wants a man. And as my mentor, Madam Sherry, the late, great Madam Sherry Ford would say, where are the men? Here's where the men are. They're sitting exactly where the woman told them to sit when she went to the bathroom. Etc., etc., etc. And this is part and parcel that you don't have to be a jerk. You don't be a pussy. You're not an ass. You're a dick. You can decide whether you're going to sit where she told you to sit or not. Jesus.
And on the extreme end that we provoke and condone here in Sex in the Pews is sexual openness and saying, no, I do what I want with my dick. You don't tell me what I'm going to do with it. You don't control this. This is mine. This is my body that I've been gifted.
That literally happened to me one time.
You should tell that story.
I will tell that story right now as we have our beautiful and special partner in the pews, Dena Lynn, waiting in the green room right now.
Get her in here. We need a female perspective.
We will get her in here momentarily after I tell this story. So I was with this woman, and I wanted to have an open relationship with her. And I made the case. As you beautiful humans know, I can make a pretty strong case. And she actually thought about it. And I really, truly think that it is the best for committed, quote unquote, monogamous relationship to infuse freedom and openness. And so I was making the case to her about this. And she was just getting more aggravated and more aggravated. And finally, she storms out of the bedroom and into the laundry room. And I followed her. And I went in there and I pulled down my pants. And I said, see this? This is my dick, and I'll put it anywhere I want. Now, just hearing that story, I know that there are potentially millions of people around the world recoiling from that comment. And most guys I've told the story to say to me, oh, she must have been so fucking pissed.
Billions of people around the world.
Billions and billions. She must have been so fucking pissed. I said, nope. I said, we had the best sex that afternoon because she was shit testing me and she respected me. I wasn't violent. I wasn't angry. I just was hard. And then I got hard and she got pleasure and we had life together. Dudes, it's your penis. Don't let your women cut it off. This is just a story out the other day that a woman, because she was pissed at her husband, bit his dick off.
Yeah. She was a methy looking character.
Nonetheless, you know what she was asked?
What?
What it tasted like. You know what she said? Tasted like chicken.
Jeez.
Everything
that is
tastes
the
like
appropriate answer.
Tastes like, no, it's like frog legs. It's frog legs. Tastes like chicken. Well, without any further ado, it is time to welcome a major member of the Power Rotation. She is a resident of the great state of Oregon. She's married. She's a mother of 8, a lover of humanity who experiences life through an artistic and shamanic soul. She's spiritually promiscuous, sexually voracious, and relationally monogamous. Her life's purpose is to help each person she encounters to see and be who they truly are. She's an artist, a teacher of her art. Her website is serendipitiesbydena.com. Please welcome in the pews, Dena Lynn. Hello, Dena.
Hello, Glenn and Owen and everybody else listening.
That was quite the little foreplay introduction there, wasn't it?
I took copious notes. I'm ready.
We covered a lot of ground.
Oh, my goodness. Let's see where to start. I could talk about Mel Gibson being disemboweled, drawn, and quartered. Well, not Mel Gibson, but the character he was playing. I could talk about
what was that guy's name? Michael. What was? Not Michael Williams. No, not Michael.
William the disemboweled is what I think he went down in history as. I'm trying to remember. William the
Francis Williams.
Well, just Google that shit.
Let's Google it. All right, you guys. I'm on it.
D, I have so many questions, and we've had such overwhelming positive response to your participation in the pews here. And I have so much to ask you. But
sure.
when you hear, because this whole concept...
William Wallace,
thank you.
Yes, thank you.
When you introduced the concept last time of ultra feminine spirit, you're an ultra feminine spirit. And I know you can hear the discussion that Owen and I just engaged in and be amening and yes, yes, yes. How did you get from somebody that resented strength, a masculine strength, not being again, I can't say this enough, not being a jerk, not being an asshole, definitely not being a pussy, but having a dick, a strong dick in your life, which I know you do in your husband, Robin. I want to get into that in a little bit. But to say, yes, that's what most, not all, but most heterosexual women. We had this girl, Kelly Elizabeth Gosh. I mean, she's a beautiful woman on last Friday's show. She's a pole dancer, a competitor, a pole dancing coach. She is she's an athlete.
She could be an Olympian.
I mean, she could take
pole dancing was she could.
But she said she wants in bed. She loves to be mostly submitted. And it's a challenge. Even a strong woman wants that, and they will challenge you. But how did you get to the place where you could find, as you said, the ultimate control, the ultimate power by submitting to your man?
First of all, I had to get in touch with my own strength, which is part of being extremely feminine and having that counter internal balance of a strong animus, the masculine part of me. So there's that internal balance happening, which gives me the security and the strength to present myself vulnerably which is also strength. It's very empowering to be vulnerable. It's the new strength to present myself in a vulnerable way to a man who has proven himself to me to be able to do that for me. He's got to show me that I can trust him in order to extend that countering trust. And then mutual trust is built in that submission and dominance that happens in that environment. It's a balancing act. And what it took for me is I discovered who I am. I got tired of listening to what everybody else was telling me I ought to be, whether it was religion or it was feminism or it was the school system or politics or anything saying this is what you should be. Well, screw that. I want to know who I really am, how I really am, and then celebrate that, express that. And I discovered where I fall on that spectrum is ultra feminine. And it's a very empowering place to be. It doesn't mean I'm weak, and it doesn't mean I submit to all men. It's not like, I mean, a man has to earn the right to be able to have any dominance over me. And it's not like that's a 24/7 situation in my relationship with my husband, nor is it the only way that we experience sex together. It's one of the flavors that we enjoy. There's many, many ways to express sexually.
The powerful reality, the biological lesson, is that when women play their role and men play their role, guess what happens? Life ensues. Mm-hmm. And if one is not playing the role effectively and healthfully, a lot of bad shit can go down. We've seen it throughout history, perpetrated against mostly women, but not just women, people that were gay and lesbian and bisexual and transgender. The reason that they've been so mistreated is because the so-called straight male community was homophobic about maybe that they had a homosexual thought or maybe that they were gay themselves. That is not life-giving. That is not a healthy perspective on sex. But you know what's happening in 2019, I'm happy to report, beautiful humans, is that men and women and LGBTQ people, straight people, tri people, people that are trying to have sex,
and everyone in between,
are getting freed up so that they can experience life and pleasure. Not enough. That's why we got to do this goddamn show. It's so more people can know about how to get freed up, what kind of perspective you need to embrace. Because let me tell you something. What you think is how you are. If you think you're a sinner, you're going to feel like a sinner and you're going to act like a sinner. If you think you're righteous and perfect and one and whole and holistic, chances are you're going to be much more inclusive, much more loving, much more productive, and it might have a much better time in bed. Good, Preaching Roberts.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
What were you going to say?
There's a huge difference between toxic masculinity and alpha masculinity.
You think?
Masculinity itself is not toxic. If any human suppresses another human, so if a male suppresses a female just because he thinks he can, that he has a sense of entitlement or superiority over her, that's toxic. But if a man dominates a woman who is willing to submit to him because he's proven himself to her and because she wants the freedom to submit to him, then that requires consent. And that's just alpha masculinity dancing with ultra femininity. And people can be anywhere on that spectrum. You know, they're not going to necessarily want a woman who is not extremely feminine or hasn't discovered that she is not going to want or appreciate a man who's intensely masculine. She's going to want something that reflects more of where she is. So we all need to know where we are.
It's true, but even most women men don't think about these things, Dena, unless they're listening to Sex in the Pews or talking to you on Facebook. But the fact of the matter is, even women that are more masculine will respond to a dick or to an alpha. I don't like the term toxic masculinity or toxic femininity. I think femininity, period, is wonderful. Mm-hmm. I think masculinity, period, is wonderful. We have a term for toxic male behavior. It's called misogyny. Why do we have to bring masculine? I want to redeem masculinity. I want to redeem femininity, if you know what I mean. so to speak.
Hey, I'm in favor of that. And let's also bring up misandry, which is how women can male bash, which is not a pretty thing either.
It's the same thing as misogyny. He's just on the other side of the coin. It's enough. The reason you're bashing an individual person or a group of people, an entire, whether it be gay, straight, male, female, whatever, is because you don't think right about yourself.
Exactly.
If you thought that when people are ugly towards somebody else, they're not being ugly because of what the person does or who they are or what sex or race or political spectrum that they live in. It's because they feel ugly about themselves. When you accept yourself, you can accept anybody. Now, that doesn't mean we like everything that everybody does. I mean, I know that I would not be happy if somebody's robbed me, which has happened, but I wouldn't hate them for it because I don't hate myself. I can't remember the last time that I experienced road rage because I fuck up when I'm driving. Or as Louis C.K., the aforementioned, Louis C.K. says, yeah, you made me go like this. And he just goes with the steering wheel for like a third of a second and tested my reflex. And it turned out just fine. You piece of shit. No, it's ridiculous. It's like the one place in the world that we can act like we really would like to act is in our vehicles. Because because there's that steel and glass protecting you. Unless somebody here, like in Florida, has got a concealed weapon, then it sometimes gets interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that self-loathing is manifested in so many different ways. And the thing about self-loathing is that a self-loather is the worst on the person that is the best to them. And the reason that is because subconsciously they're thinking, I am an asshole. And you're loving me? You must be a real asshole. And so they project their own self-hatred on this person that's given their life to them. How many times?
It's the root of narcissism.
Yes, and you've experienced that in so many different ways, Dena. How have you come out of that?
There's been a lot of internal work on my part. I had to recognize that there's nothing I can fix out there. And typically what's happening out there is the effect, and what's the cause is what's happening in here, in me. For me to try to fix things out there, how somebody else is thinking, acting, dealing with their life, would be like looking in the mirror and trying to get a smudge off my face by rubbing on the mirror. It's not going to work. That's the reflection out there. But that doesn't mean I need to hang out with those who choose to not treat me the way that I want to be treated. I can have good boundaries. I don't need to hate them, but I don't need to hang out with them either.
So we talked a little bit before the show about your experience with ayahuasca.
Oh, well, that's a segue.
I was wondering what role that played in this internal work that you've been doing.
That was part of my internal journeying. I was invited to go to Poland several years ago, the month of August in 2012, and I stayed with someone I didn't know too well, a friend of a friend, a Facebook friend, but he had really good reviews from the friends, and I had the inner yes. There was something in me, deep inside of me, that said, you need to do this. So I went to Poland, and my entire motivation was to say yes to anything that was offered to me that aligned with that yes on the inside. Things that felt like an invitation for growth. And one of my motivations was to overcome fear and conditioning that had been in me since early childhood, sort of an atmosphere of fear, overprotection, be safe at all cost, that was backfiring in my ability to be a free person and creative and expressive. So while I was there, I was invited to go to this cabin in the Carpathian Mountains near the border with the Ukraine, a cabin that had no electricity, no running water. It was owned by a couple who were in the IT business there in Poland, friends of my host. We went there. There were 5 of us. Usually with an ayahuasca experience, you pay a lot of money, and it's a huge group. It's an event. This was 5 of us, and this was done for free. We walked behind the cabin, and there's this little woman stirring a cauldron, like right out of Hansel and Gretel. And my host walked up to her and said, "How you doing, Margot, you old witch?" And I'm thinking, huh? What? Where am I? How did I? Nobody knows I'm here. What am I in for? And she turned around and said, I didn't come for you, you rascal. I came for this one. She pointed at me. She said, I've driven across 2 countries to come to meet you and to offer this experience to you. And I didn't know what to make of this. And she said, you don't even know who you are yet, do you? And she looked right through me. And that's like the 3rd time someone's done that to me. I'm like, okay, one of you clue me in on who I am, please, because I'd really like to know. And we had dinner, and the cauldron's still there. And I'm thinking, whatever she was cooking, we didn't eat it. And I said, what's in there? And she looked at me and she winked. She said, it's ayahuasca. It's taking 3 days to brew. Had something to do with the full moon that was happening, part of their tradition. She had been raised as a shaman in both the Hungarian and the Incan Peruvian traditions. And she wanted to offer this experience to me. I don't know how she knew. I don't know what motivated her to drive across 2 countries to get to this visitor from the United States. But it happened. And it was a powerful, nauseating. Like, ayahuasca tastes like, if you could make a tea from cat butts, it would taste like cat butt tea. That's what it tastes like. It doesn't go down easy. But it's
and if I may interject here, just to explain a little bit about the ayahuasca, it's an ancient root that a lot of ancient cultures used in ceremoniously, a vine in sacred rituals, and contains the chemical dimethyltryptamine, DMT,
yes,
which is produced naturally in our bodies. I think our lungs and kidneys or livers, and some people think that it's released when we're dreaming. But when you either smoke it or drink it in the form of this ceremonial brew, it creates incredible religious, spiritual experiences that can be life-changing.
I wouldn't call them religious, but nonetheless, I know what you mean. I thought you were going to say that when she said she was stirring the cauldron and you hadn't gotten anything out of it, that was her husband's wiener in there boiling. And then,
no, we're not.
And she would have said, "Don't worry, Margot. It tastes like chicken."
Yeah, well, just to tie a couple stories together. It's well done, Glenn.
Thank you. It's good radio. So all right, so you have the ayahuasca.
Yes, yes.
And how long did you? Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So we're sitting around a fire in the back of this cottage. There's a waterfall flowing. There's crickets and tree frogs chirping. Mimosa trees are forming a canopy. Full moon is out. It's an incredible setting, and we're all around the fire. And the rest of these people have experienced ayahuasca. I'm the only neophyte in the circle. And I've got my knees up to my chin. I got my arms around my legs, and I'm rocking back and forth, and I'm staring at the fire, waiting for something to happen. And I heard this really loud shh in my left ear, like it was inside and outside my head. And I looked around. Everyone else was starting to experience something. I could tell they were in an altered state or beginning to. So I go back to rocking and waiting, and I heard the shh again. And then I said, okay, are we supposed to hear something? And they looked at me and they kind of laughed. They said, just give over to it. Just don't control it. Give over. That whole submission thing right there. Say yes to it, submit to it, trust it. So I did. I have an excellent submission, trust, give over mechanism when it's in alignment with my soul. So I did. And then I started to feel like I needed to hug the earth. So I get down like on my stomach with one leg up, kind of it's a transition position for women who've given birth naturally. I just went into that position, like as much contact surface with the planet so I wouldn't get flung off it was my feeling. And I gave in, and I had a series of vivid downloads of wisdom, like the other side of reality opened up and just filled me up, replacing lies with truth. And I would think, oh, I've got the keys to the universe right here. And then I would come out of it, and I would think, what the hell was it? What was that key? I can't find it, because it bypassed my conscious mind. It was a deeper experience. And I think the shh was telling my brain that it was not to partake of this. This was going to hit me on a lower level. And the only one I remember out of all of these downloads as I would go in and out of this state of consciousness, I mean, incredible beings with lots of eyes and vibrant hues and kind of like, you know, the movie Avatar, if you've seen it, which was based on actually an ayahuasca experience, but I'll get into that another time. The last scene I saw that I did get to remember, it's as if I was looking at this giant velvet black billboard, like I was up close to it, and written in bold font in vibrant colors of oranges, yellows, and greens, like neon colors, in all caps, in a language I've never seen on planet Earth, ancient or modern. Somehow I could see it was not a familiar language and translate at the same time. It said, "From now on, nothing in this life remains the same. Sudden and complete change." And I knew I was to say yes to that. And I did. And then I came to, and we spent the next couple of hours, all of us piled in a heap on the blankets, giggling. Everything was hysterical.
How long was that whole process that you just described?
It was all night, and most of the people would end up throwing up, purging at different points. I didn't until early morning, so the ayahuasca stayed in me probably a good 12 hours.
Have you ever seen the movie A Million Ways to Die in the West with Seth MacFarlane and Charlize Theron and Liam Neeson?
Not.
It's a comedy. What's his name? Patrick Harris. What's the kid's name?
Swayze?
No. Neil Patrick Harris is in it. It's a pretty good cast, and it's a little long, but there's a ayahuasca experience and trip that Seth MacFarlane goes on that is hilarious. But it's definitely written by somebody who's been there, done that. That's for sure. You ever do anything like that, Big O?
I've experienced with the magic mushrooms and LSD a couple times, only a handful of times, but I'm very curious about the ayahuasca experience, and I've read studies. There's been studies. It's been studied a little bit in places where it's allowed to. It's illegal to study right now. I think we're getting a little looser with the laws in the States, but
yes.
It's ridiculously overwhelming statistics of helping people recover from smoking, cigarettes, nicotine, and even heroin addiction. It's helping people cope with.
Similar success with ibogaine or iboga.
Yes, exactly.
And you just Google it, you guys, YouTube it. I mean, the ibogaine, there's thousands of videos of people that are clearly, seriously mentally ill or seriously drug addicted, and they go through this process, and it's medically supervised. You can go to clinics in Canada and Mexico. Of course, they don't have them here in the United States because the FDA wanted $65 million to study the effects of ibogaine. And who finances our pharmaceutical studies in the United States of America? The pharmaceutical industry. And they don't want ibogaine, because that's a one and done. It's literally acts theoretically as a rebooting of your brain. Just like when your computer, your phone's not working, you turn it off, you turn it back on, and all of a sudden it's working again. The theory is that it takes your brain and your soul, if you will, back to where the initial damage was done, even in utero. Mm-hmm. And of course, our daughter Gracie, who you know, Dena, has been severely schizophrenic. And she's under control with some really strong psychotropic medication. And she's doing relatively well. She's sweet as could be. And we love her to bits. But I've talked to her about it, about the ibogaine. And she says to me so lovingly, she said, "Pop, I trust you, whatever you think is best for me." But Dena, I got to be frank, I'm scared. I'm scared of putting her through that. I don't know what would be on the other side. She's not equipped with the kind of survival skills that it takes to make it in modern society. That's why she's in a group home. She's able to do very little for herself. If you had a daughter or a loved one like Gracie, what would you recommend?
Having had the ayahuasca experience, which is not as strong as iboga. Iboga is a West African shrub. As I understand it, and I was going to try ibogaine. There's a place in Serbia called Iboga House where they take all kinds of people with all kinds of problems, and in a clinical setting, they've studied it now for like 20 years. They have incredible success rates. Iboga House, which was in British Columbia, recently got shut down. That was run by Gabor Mate, who is a physician, addiction specialist.
Incredibly intelligent guy.
Love him. Love him. Yes. One of my heroes. Yeah. If I had a child who was suffering in that kind of way, I would definitely do all the research I would need to do, including talking to people who've experienced it, and I would try to get my child to where they could get a reboot. Ayahuasca doesn't do as in-depth a reboot. I've heard it described as ayahuasca is like grandmother taking you on her lap and saying, okay, child, I'm going to help you face your shit. It's a reckoning of sorts. Peyote is described as grandfather taking you out behind the woodshed and beating the shit out of you.
Kicking your ass.
Oh, yeah, not kind at all. And then Iboga is more like you said, a total reboot. So there's and mushrooms I've also done, and LSD, all of them in my happy month in Poland. LSD was the mildest of what I tried, and mushrooms was interesting, but it didn't do deep transformative work. So ayahuasca was the strongest thing that and it's not something you do lightly. It's like, oh yeah, let's throw up all night. Right. Yeah, let's go in and out of nausea. And I think it's not something you go to.
It's one of the stigmas I feel like this gets with people who are maybe ignorant of the topic, is that it falls into the drug category, and the concerns of addiction and abuse come into play. But across the board, you talk to people that have experienced these things, and the response is usually like, it was amazing, but God, I'm going to stay away from that thing for a while. That was a lot. I need to process. I need to digest. So
you seriously need to digest. I think still, we're talking now, 7 years later, I'm still digesting what I went through. And I would do it again if I felt that yes again. There are places here in Oregon where it's considered part of a sacred ceremony among the Native Americans and others who are in shamanism, and it's not cheap, and you go away for a weekend, and it's supervised. I would caution people to avoid the ayahuasca tourist industry that's happening in some places in Bolivia and Peru, where people go on these treks, and non-shamans pretending to be shamans are taking advantage of tourists, and there have been some deaths and injuries stories that have happened.
There's some shyster shamans. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, yeah, unfortunately, like with every other human endeavor, except
for Sex and the Pews podcast host. She is Dena Lynn. She is our ultra feminine spirit, power player extraordinaire. Owen Pratt, Glenn Klein in the Pews. Glad to have you along for the ride.
It's funny bringing it kind of back to the Pews. Right up until the point where I was approached by college evangelists who succeeded in converting me into a Christian, I was experiencing with these psychedelics and exploring what reality was and trying to learn and uncover truth at the heart of it. And up until I was converted, and then was told that was a bad thing and I shouldn't do it. But I really, there's a part of me that's really convinced, and I think it's true, that these can be powerful, potentially dangerous, reverent, need to be approached cautiously, but that they can be conduits for coming to know to have a deeper understanding of truth, and that truth being that we're all perfect and righteous and holy and sinless and blameless, and that we are perfect love and perfectly unified with each other and connected to the planet. Some of the greatest revelations I've had have been about the interconnectedness with other humans on such a deep level that word doesn't even begin to touch what I felt, really just in so many ways that I feel like is beyond the five senses, of connection to just people and the planet, and that there was no separation. You tend to have, like, when you quote unquote hallucinate, you can look and you kind of, the line gets blurred between, wall and door to where it becomes wall, door, floor, ceiling, and it all just melts into one thing. And I feel like the same experience happens with how you see people, that your perception of like me and then everything else, where I am the I of who I am, just that line of the concept of who you think you are kind of melts away, and then you realize that all of your experiences are also you, and in some deep level.
Are you tripping right now, bro?
I'm in it.
No, he's singing a song. It's a good one.
That is a good song. Have you ever jumped out of an airplane? Oh?
I have twice.
Yeah, and see, it's like that, ladies and gentlemen. If you're going to jump out of an airplane, have somebody who knows what they're doing with you. That enhanced your life experience. It gave you a different perspective up there, flying in the air, didn't it?
It did.
Now, it's not something that I would ever do.
Right.
I have zero desire to jump out of a fucking airplane. But you did, and you're engaging in certain other activities. Do it supervised, like Dena did in Poland. How was the vodka in Poland?
Well, I did have a shaman challenge me to take 2 shots of vodka, and this guy outweighed me like by twice. I weigh 98 pounds maybe. So after he says, you have another leg, take another drink. Apparently that's a Polish thing. Like if you have 2 legs, you can take 2 shots. I'm like, dude, look at my legs. My legs are not as big as your legs.
You have 2 legs. Well, so you come back from Poland. I'm going to fast forward here. And eventually you meet Robin. And
yes, a year later.
Okay, so we wanted to hear all about Robin Weingart, right? His last name? Wingert. And Owen did this amazing encapsulation video of your last appearance on Sex in the Pews, and it's it's beautifully done with great visuals and film with quotes from Dena Lynn. And Robin's comment on Facebook after it was posted on the Sex in the Pews Facebook page. Now think about this, ladies and gentlemen. His wife is emoting and articulating an extremely wonderful, open approach to sexuality. Some people, of course, over time have criticized people like Dena and like myself and Owen and people like Masters and Johnson and Kinsey, and I could name another 500,000 or more people who have decided that it's time to take sex out of the dirtiness and out of the darkness and into the light. And here is what Robin's comment was that was so striking to me, Dena, was he said about you, his wife, that this is what Dena was born to do. Articulating this kind of perspective and freedom and openness and intelligence about this most incredibly important subject to the world. When you read that, how did that make you feel?
Oh, well, a rush of love. He told me, he tells me often, he's very expressive himself. He's very masculine, and he has a strong inner anima. So he's able to do that full expression. He tells me all the time how proud he is of me. He was obviously like filled with pride, with joy, aroused. I mean, we had a good time that night after.
You're welcome, Robin.
And me.
You're
welcome, Dena. You're welcome, Dena. Nice that we're still involved a little bit that way, even long distance remotely. That's
what happens when you get vulnerable, when you bare your soul. It's not just getting naked physically. It's easy to take off clothes, but to bare your soul to another human being and to be that kind of naked, and they see you, flaws and all, and still love you, still get excited by the energy of who you are, that's hot.
Yeah, but you weren't just exposing yourself to Robin, another person. You've exposed yourself, and Owen, I mean, amazingly opened up. He said he never told that story before, period, to anybody.
It was a great story.
Do you know how powerful that is? And the things that we share, you're not just sharing with one person, you're sharing with all of humanity. And your husband is proud of you for doing it. It's like when we were talking to Kelly Elizabeth Goss and her boyfriends sometimes have had a really difficult time with the fact of how she makes her living as a pole dancing fitness instructor competitor, because it's sexy as fuck. And she does it that way. That's how they do it.
Right.
It's like people being ashamed of their daughters or their sons who are strippers or male or female escorts. What the fuck?
Yeah,
No,
that's not how Robin is. He could not be more proud of what I'm doing and how I'm inspiring others. And I in the front row, when I stood in front of 400 people at a theater called Mystery Box Theater and shared a story, a very intimate story about a tantric experience where you've heard of squirting, of course, but this was an 8-towel experience. And he sat right there in the front and watched me bare my everything, telling everybody what this was like. And it's a YouTube clip. I mean, millions have heard that story. I'm very grateful to have him as a husband. He's a great guy to journey through all of this with.
What do you think the key is for him to be so secure to allow his woman not only to do this, but to encourage her?
We have a very strong bond. We have a strong commitment to each other. We're very open with each other. We trust each other implicitly. That trust was probably the first thing I felt for him. We met through OkCupid back in 2013 when I was just so disgusted with the fact that here I was, this sexually vibrant, alive woman who knew who I was. I'd gone through this sexual training, and the number of people with whom I could match, it's already narrow. It got a lot narrower. And you can't go onto a dating site and say, by the way, I'm into submission, because you will invite some weird shit out of the woodwork. I didn't want that. But he picked up on it anyway. And he was wanting to explore, what is it like to step into dominance? And again, not 24/7, but to embody it when it felt good to do so. So we didn't even talk about that at first. And I friend zoned him right away. He wasn't 6 foot tall with dark hair and brown eyes, which was my type, even though I'm like 5'1" and the size of an average 12-year-old. That was just my type. And he wasn't that. And so I friend zoned him, but I liked him and I trusted him. And he was the guy I was confiding in about all of these idiots I was going out with on the dating site. Just one dud after another of men who didn't know what to do with me. And Robin was such a gentleman. And I remember telling him about this tantric experience I'd had. And he said, yeah, I could do that. And I remember looking at him thinking, no, you don't understand. It takes training and intentionality and a lot of work. He goes, no, I think I could do that. And I remember thinking, dude, if I let you in sexually, I would blow you away. And on our second undate, when I let him in sexually, he blew me away. Because there was, I think in every gentleman, every true gentleman, there's lurking a beast. And in every lady, there's lurking a whore. And when they get to come out and play, when you can be that person in public who can be appropriate and talk to anybody about anything and meet them on their level, and yet when you get alone with your person, you can let that beast and that whore come out and play. And it is powerful stuff.
Good times. My grandmother on my dad's side, Ida Klein, she died in 1975.
Ida Klein?
Ida Klein. Ida. Why is that funny? Why is that funny?
I decline.
Ida Klein. IDA.
Ida Klein.
I know. So, well, Owen and I got it.
Never thought of that. You're making fun of my dead grandmother?
Oh, no.
Take it.
She's an amazing woman and very prim and proper. I mean, you're classy lady. And so she would be, let's see, she would be 124 years old, I think. And she told my cousin Debbie, who's in her 70s now, when she was marrying my cousin Mitchell, she said, Deb, I'm going to tell you something. She said, the success to a happy marriage is You be a lady in the parlor and a whore in the bedroom.
There you go.
And the fact that I heard that came out of Ida Klein's mouth, my grandmother, just blew, but it was a clue. It was a very insightful.
Love it.
And great advice from a matriarch of a large family in the 1970s. Now, it sounds like you and Robin had got it going on, but because the way that you articulate your life on Facebook, which is unparalleled, honesty and openness and joy and hand-wringing and doubting and faith and all this shit I know that you guys, it hasn't been all butterflies and rainbows since you guys got married. How have you worked through that?
Well, we had to be excruciatingly honest with ourselves and with each other about the things that, we've been together for 5 years. We lived together for a year. We broke up after, we got together, moved in after 6 months, lived together for a year, broke up after a year. I moved out. We stayed best friends, so we tried to help each other get over each other, and that backfired. We became a couple again, first just because it organically happened, and then we became intentional about it. And then we had some pretty serious stuff happen just over a year ago. And then early February, maybe I have to look at the date, but like this week, a year ago, he proposed to me. I was sitting on the toilet. And shit gets real when you're in the bathroom. And he said he couldn't imagine his life without me and couldn't imagine us without me being his wife. And this is third marriage for him, second for me. We never talked about marriage. So when we got married, there are things that happen when you get married that it's hard to describe, but there were things that we discovered about each other, some things that we had not been quite open with each other about that came to the forefront, and we had to face them head on. And that took some courage, took a lot of intentionality. We went to marriage counseling, and we did a lot of the work on our own. He worked on himself, and I worked on myself to deal with the stuff inside that we weren't happy with so that we could be happy and accepting of each other.
How happy, before you were on the toilet, did he get down on one knee? Like, you know.
No.
Did he
away for the weekend?
Did he wipe your ass at least? Did he do? Was there some other?
No.
What happened? Did he just decided to spring it on you while you were taking a dupe?
No. So we went away for the weekend, and he told me there was something he wanted to talk to me about. And first, I'm bracing myself. Oh, what are you going to talk to me about? And he goes, no, nothing like that. And he was very emotional and very. It's hard to describe, very open, very vulnerable with me. And then all of a sudden we're at the beach and I say, I've got an art class tonight. I forgot to tell you, we got to get back home. We're only like 45 minutes from the beach. So we drive back home and we're in the living room and he kissed me goodbye and things got amorous. And then we're on the floor and I've got clothes coming off in all directions. We're having a fast and furious quickie. And then I said, I've got to shower. I got to go teach this class because, good sex is messy sex. So, I had to shower. So I go toward the bathroom and I sit on the toilet and I've got like my shirt half on, half off. And he sinks down to the floor right in front of me. And then told me that he'd been thinking that he wanted to marry me. And I stared at him like I did not see that coming. Did not. And I didn't end up having time for the shower. We both got teary-eyed and a little emotional about the whole thing. And then I went off to teach an art class. And we ended up getting married in June, summer solstice at 11:11 a.m. in Dallas City Park, Dallas, Oregon. We opened sacred space with a shaman and beat on drums, and it was fun. I had a fun time at my own wedding.
Like a blast. Like a very special way to do that.
Probably wasn't a shyster shaman drumming on the drum there. Shyster shamans.
How was the art class that you taught?
Well, I told them what had just happened, and they still remember it. And when they met Robin, you're the guy who proposed to her on the toilet. So that's part of his claim to fame right there.
But why did you guys have to get married? We talked about this privately. Why couldn't you just, why is that important?
It was important to us, and we've done marriage our own way. So once upon a time, when I was a Christian because it was handed to me, and I was monogamous because it was handed to me, I didn't question it. I was unconsciously monogamous. And there was a sense of propriety and control, et cetera, that went along with the whole patriarchy Christian environment that I'd been raised in. And that was I would call my codependent stage of development. And then I became very independent. I wanted to know who I was as an autonomous whole human being. So the first stage is, I need you to survive. And the second stage is, I don't need anybody. I can survive totally on my own. And I had to go through that development later in life than other humans might because of my own my particular outcome. And then what I've discovered is that when you are autonomous and independent and you know you don't need anybody, you develop this other kind of need. It's a need for going deeper than you can go alone as an individual. You want to join forces with another whole person and see how much further you can go with that other person than you could on your own. It's easy to be a guru sitting on the side of a mountain and not be involved with anybody else. But when I've committed to another person, I've said basically, I'm going to let you do soul surgery on me. I'm going to hand you the knife, and I'm going to trust you, even though there's no anesthesia involved. I'm going to trust you not to kill me with that knife. You have the power to, but I'm going to trust you to help me heal. So we've gone deep with each other, deep into the recesses that typically don't get triggered when you don't allow someone in that intimately.
But why can't you do it without being married?
Well, I don't do marriage the way that most people do.
What about openness? What about openness in the relationship sexually?
We're exclusive. We're monogamous. We both made an intentional choice about this.
And how beneficial or detrimental has that been from time to time?
How would I explain that? There was a time when Robin wondered whether he might be polyamorous, and I told him in the beginning, look, I've explored that already, because if there was ever a time where polyamory should work for someone, it would have been for me when I was leaving my marriage, my first marriage, and was involved with somebody else. He was the catalyst to get me out of the marriage. And if there was ever a time where it could have worked to get my security needs met and my erotic romantic needs met, it was tailor-made for me. But I discovered through my own experience that's not how I'm wired. And I know there are people who are. There are people for whom it works. There are also people who don't want to go deep, don't want to commit, don't want to close off any options, and so they want to keep all those options open. There's such a thing as people who are addicted to the limerence, to the falling in love, new relationship excitement, and they want to perpetuate that. And then when things get tough, they bail. And what I've discovered is that when things get tough, that's an invitation to go really deep and get to a deeper stage, a deeper level. So that's what I wanted. And I told Robin up front that I was not polyamorous, not by default.
Yeah, but there's a difference, is there not, Dee, between being polyamorous, in other words, you can love many people, go deep with many people or several people, and having the kind of depth of relationship that you and Robin have, and still allow for just some fun, some outside fun, because it's fun. And I think that taking the temptation away that it is a deal killer actually makes it less likely that the people that are in the partnership are going to go do that. It's what Paul said. Paul said that the law adds power to the temptation, or what we're already tempted with. Of course, you're looking at other guys.
Here. I did not put a law over him. I'm not claiming any rights from him.
But if something just happened, it just happened one night, whether it be Robin or you, is that a deal killer for your relationship?
I don't think things just happen. I think we are dishonest with ourselves about the buildup toward things happening. There are all sorts of steps that we take, sometimes unconsciously. So the trick is to be really aware, to know yourself really well. And
is it a deal killer though?
We haven't faced that, and I can't say that it is or it isn't until such a thing can happen. I've studied Esther Perel's writings on the anatomy of an affair and what happens with infidelity. And there's different stages of infidelity.
Just the fact that we're calling it infidelity, where did that concept come from?
It's an unfaithfulness to the commitment between the two people.
But you can be totally faithful to somebody and full of fidelity, but still on occasion kiss somebody else or, have an encounter. And it might not have had a lead up, although there might have been some inner stuff happening, but you just meet somebody at a restaurant or a bar or on an airplane and you have a moment. What's wrong?
I missed that last part. I'm sorry. For some reason, I had a phone call trying to come in and it made a noise in my ear. Sorry about that.
I said there's a difference between an affair or something leading up to an affair and then just an encounter that turns into just an amazing moment that couldn't be had with your significant other because they aren't there. I just think that if you put a restriction or a rule or a law that says if you ever have sex, and of course, I know people that divorce their husbands because they caught them jerking off to porn. Or if you have an emotional affair with somebody, that those, and certainly if you put tab A into slot B or vice versa, that is a deal killer. Why have that? You guys have such a wonderful thing going on. Why not say, hey, listen, if something happens, whether you would want to know about it or not, that's something, be safe. And I love you. Have fun. What's wrong with that?
First of all, I wouldn't know it, even if nothing was said. There's an energy that happens. There's an energy exchange that occurs. And I understand it works for you that way, and that's fine. But that's not how it works for me, and it's not how Robin and I have chosen to have a relationship with each other. He's free to do what he wants, but we've made choices to have this together. And it would definitely affect the depth that we're able to go to if we're having that with someone else as well. It can be different for somebody else. If it works for someone, great. I see a whole lot of messiness that happens in relationships that open themselves up. It's not often that the relationship survives that. And for me, the relationship is too important. It's kind of like I could eat fried food. It would taste great in my mouth, be a pleasure to chew and swallow, and then I'm going to pay for it.
But
because
not
it's going
if
to feel like rock in my stomach.
But not if you have it a little bit once a year.
Glenn, you are free to live your life the way you want to.
Yeah, but of course, and so are you. But we're trying to help people that you and I and Owen may never meet. Who here you say yes, of course, there's messiness because it's human beings with open relationships. But one thing they know. All the traditional monogamy that they see in front of them is a disaster. They've experienced the disaster. Statistically, it's a disaster. So from a macro standpoint, obviously you and Robin, everybody's free to do what they want to do. And ironically, you're talking to a guy who is a serial monogamist. I mean, pretty much my entire life, I've been a one-woman man. But I know that those relationships do better if there's freedom infused to it because I want my significant other to be happy. And I can't make them happy 24/7.
Well, I'm responsible for my own happiness. I don't put my happiness on Robin.
You know what I mean.
Responsible for his.
And the biggest, I think, one of the things that seems so shocking and such like a devastating part for people who experience and go through affairs and disappointments like that, I found that. And I think there's been studies done on this where it's not necessarily the simple physical fact of the sex act that was the most devastating, but it was this idea that the person who they thought that they were spending their life with was someone different than who they had come to know. And so all of a sudden in this one experience, this manifestation of experience is a manifestation of this, thing that they weren't expecting, this snake in the grass, so to speak, and it just completely throws the order of their life into chaos, and where they don't even think they know the person that they're looking at anymore, because there was this thing that they weren't expecting to happen. And so I think to your point, Dena, about being honest and self-aware as being two really crucial parts of having the successful relationship that you do, is that you really know each other, and you two may be comfortable with, I mean, it sounds like you're incredibly comfortable and happy with the framework that you've put around your relationship, and that there's a spectrum to your point of people, you know, getting divorced for watching porn and masturbate. There's a spectrum from monogamy to polygamy, where for some people, they may be comfortable and excited and turned on by the fact of watching porn together or inviting another couple into the bedroom. But there's certain rules and things that one person's, and you've got to kind of set up, and you've got the freedom to create the framework in which you can relate to each other, that respects each other and your own desires. And that maybe perhaps a part of your compatibility is based upon where you fall on that monogamous to polygamous spectrum.
Oh, sure. There's, you've heard of monogamish, perhaps, where there's like a level of flirting that's allowed or interacting with others. And I have done so much changing and growing in my own life. If you had told me, I don't know, 15 years ago that I'd be where I am today, I would have denied it. I couldn't have imagined it. So I know I'm capable of great change and great growth. For me, this has been about being very honest about who I am and where I am and how I am, and being willing to grow. So, I mean, Esther Perel talks about how most people will have 3 to 4 significant marriages or long-term relationships in their lifetime.
If they're lucky.
And sometimes with the same person, because you change. And therefore, the relationship can change. So I imagine there's going to be all kinds of renegotiatings, you know, states of the union. Where are we? How are we? What's going on? What do you need? All of that. And if it ever came to where what Robin needed for his own well-being, because it fit him, fit his soul, and what I needed, if those were at odds, if we couldn't get enough of an overlap, then we would have to talk about, what do we do differently with the relationship? And we've been there so many times, which is why we are where we are now, because we've had to face these difficult issues of, are we truly compatible on that level? It's been a challenge.
Relationships are always a challenge, regardless of how they manifest. And you have 3 to 4 long-term relationships with different people, even the same people. But, you know,
well, that's what I'm saying. The same, you can have 4 different relationships with the same person,
right? Because
as you grow and as they grow, so does the relationships like this. It's like having a baby between the two of you. It's not really you. It's something. It's got its own entity and its own purpose and its own lifespan. And it's good to honor that, to not try to make it be something. You can't make your natural child be what you want it to be. You get to observe it and let it inform you. And I think relationships are the same. We get to learn from, what do they need as an entity? What's healthy for it?
It's such good stuff. Communication, regardless of what or how your relationship manifests itself, whether you want the traditional monogamy, letting the state approve and regulate your relationship, whether you want to be monogamish, or polyamorous or open, talk to your people. Again, the reason that people don't convey openness and honesty, as Owen did today, as I attempt to do on every program, as Dena does all the time in all of her communication, is because we're settled with our relationship with God. Because we know that God's not fucking judging us. So who do we care about who judges us? If God's cool with us, I should be cool with myself. And therefore, I don't really care what anybody else thinks, as long as I'm following my heart and being a decent person and taking other people's feelings into consideration as best I can. But, you know, they say that there's somebody for everybody. But you know what Louis C.K. said about it, D, right?
What did he say?
He said, nope, and stop saying it because it's mean. He said some people will go through life and they will never touch another person's genitalia, and their genitalia will never be touched by another person. Nobody even kisses them on the lips. And of course, everybody in the crowd is groaning. And he goes, "Oh, well, you go fuck them then." He goes, because they are just butt 100% ugly. And everybody's like, no, don't say that about another human being. Then you go fuck them with all that love in your heart. And oh my God, there are people that are either asexual or have no intimacy, and you may be listening to me right now. You're one of them. There's answers for you. Email us. We can help you. fun@sexinthepews.com. We can help you if you've been a sexually deprived person. Not everybody is having this wonderful sex out there, you guys. Most people aren't. Most people aren't doing what Dena and Robin apparently are. Most people, even 25-year-olds, are not out there dating and on Bumble. And there's a lot of people that are, but there's a lot that aren't. And don't feel bad about yourself if you don't feel like you've attained a sexual standing that you want or that you think is a societal norm. Talk to somebody, communication, have somebody in your life that you can talk to about this, because there is a fulfillment for you. There is a sexual experience that you can walk in. This is one of the reasons we're doing the show. Not everybody that's listening, we have people listening right now, Owen, that are virgins, and they're in their 20s and 30s and 40s, and they would prefer not to be. There's help for you guys. D, when I remember when I first started dating and having sex, every single woman I was with was not orgasmic. And I didn't know what to do about it. They just never had achieved an orgasm. And I wanted to help them. I was a giver even back in those days. And so I went to the university bookstore and found the one book on female orgasm. There was one book, one little paperback at the University of Wisconsin in Madison bookstore. And I gave it to every girl. And of course, here came the orgasms. That you think they liked me after that a little bit? And then when it was our daughter's turn, I wanted our girls to have a healthy sexual life. I went to Barnes and Noble's, and now there's hundreds of books.
Oh yes,
on female orgasm, but I found the same book,
What's the name of it? Remember?
Female orgasm, I think.
Real direct with that one.
How to come 8 feet long and squirt all over the. No, it's just the information's out there. Oprah Winfrey did a wonderful job with the Berman sisters many years ago to help millions. Tens of millions of women find their clitorises. Fellas, find your women's clitoris.
Hold on. We all know where our clitorises are. It's you guys who didn't know. We've always known.
Yeah, but
it's obvious to us.
But women didn't want to touch it. It was considered dirty. It was considered
whorish. Well, there's all that in olden days. Yes.
Well,
don't touch yourself down there. Don't touch that.
We're still being affected by the olden days. We're still being affected by the goddamn Puritans. And they're the puritanical, shame-based approach to not just sex, but just life. Ugh, the divisiveness and the disunity, the tribalism. Enough with the judgment. And let's have an open dialogue on a much more micro scale like Robin and Dena have. Oh, frankly, like you and I have as business partners. We talk a lot. We talk through a lot of shit, don't we?
We do.
That's healthy. Most people just most people just clam up, get all pissed off, have a hissy fit,
suppress it,
have make faces. Fuck that shit.
Passive aggressive.
Kick the
passive
dog.
Aggressive. Exactly. Well, this is the last show on the world that's going to be passive aggressive. We're just aggressive. Oh, good stuff, D. Thank you so much. Go to Dena or serendipitiesbydena.com. She's on the team.
And if you're struggling with anything or want to talk through some stuff that we've in the vein of what we've been talking about, feel free to reach out. fun@sexinthepews.com. Shoot us an email. We'd love to connect with you and talk through any struggles or successes, any stories that you have that are related. We really want to hear your experiences. And if you hear something what we're saying, just love to connect with you.
Thanks, D. We'll do it next week.
You're welcome. Thank you.
There she goes. The very lovely and talented and brilliant and articulate and sexy as fuck, Dena Lynn.
That was amazing.
She's amazing. You can see why I was attracted to her, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not just her intelligence and her ability to communicate, but she's easy on the eyes as well.
I always think it's so funny as kind of a man's man and bombastic and brash and strong and bold-headed as you are, you got this draw towards this like spiritual, shamanistic, not necessarily in the way like the new agey, like that your experience with the hippie girl at the tanning saloon.
Yes.
You've got this tendency towards like this
Actually,
really open-minded.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I take that as a compliment. Actually, my thing is strong women, smart, strong women. If they're into spirituality, awesome. If they're into hockey, awesome even more.
I meant to bring that up earlier too, is that I've noticed we were talking about the psychedelics, but I've noticed a lot of people kind of in that space that are aware of that stuff, and whether it's yoga and meditation or, psychedelics to a little bit, the energy and healings and kind of Eastern medicine type thought processes, that a lot of them are very aware and deeply connected with a truth and this almost the gospel. I've always seen like an interesting overlap of gospel and the train of thought that a lot of those people have.
They can be. They can be on a journey and just be as judgmental and pig-headed and
this is true.
Dumb as anybody else. So how can people follow us besides on the email address?
Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, Apple app, podcast app. We would love it if you hit us with a follow, a like, a rate, and subscribe. Go and connect with us too. And enter your dick pics to our Dick Pic of the Week contest. Learn all about it. Get connected. There's a growing community here around this. I'm on all platforms, and we just
let your friends know about it. If you guys are, I know you're enjoying it because you're listening. Tell your friends. Tell your women friends. Tell your male friends.
Share the promotional videos to help so people can get a taste of what we're doing.
What a great job you do on those. They're just getting better every time. You did an amazing job with Dena. This last one you did on Kelly Elizabeth Goss, tremendous. It's fun, right?
Oh, yeah.
Giving life and pleasure. That's what we do. Let's hear from you. If you have ideas for shows or if we can help you in any way, just like we offered before, it's sexinthepews.com. Big O, what shit did we learn today?
Today, let's take a look here. I was taking notes. I learned the difference between imply and infer. That to imply something is externally communicating, and inferring something is when you're perceiving it.
Exactly.
You make an inference. You want to know what shit you learned about?
Oh, what shit did I learn about? I know what I learned.
What did you learn?
First of all, I learned that you were uncircumcised. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay.
And that you had a kind of an icky experience, but that it turned out to be kind of stretched you, so to speak.
It did.
That was a very, very good thing.
Set me free a little bit, physically.
And I bet you sharing that set you free emotionally and psychically a little bit. You still a little nervous right now?
A little nervous.
Yeah. No, that's. You know what? You came out of your comfort zone.
I did.
And you did nothing wrong. You're perfect and righteous and holy just the way you are. Before you shared that story and after you shared that story.
Yes, Jesus.
Yeah. What else? What other shit did I learn?
That Dena has had an 8-towel experience.
In front of people.
As
her husband Robin was watching.
Wow.
That's cool. That'd had to be freeing.
Oh, yeah. I got one more thing written down here.
Yes.
That great sex is messy sex.
Dena said, great sex is messy sex. Often is. Can attest to that. Have some great sex, you guys, or have sex with yourself, or don't have sex. Do whatever you want to do. Follow your frickin' heart and be happy. Be at peace. Know that you're loved, that we love you, and that we'll get to do it all again next time here on Sex in the Pews. And until that time, this is Glenn Klein.
And Owen Pratt
saying, Shalom, everybody.
Bitches.